Almighty God in heaven, we thank you for the Sabbath day. We thank you for this message and all the light and the rain that you're pouring out from heaven upon us. Pray you'll help us to partake of that rain, to drink it down and absorb it, that we may be changed. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Okay. So, I don't have the chat open, so if anything goes in the chat, someone can feel free to just interrupt and read it out. So somebody asked me to go over the external events that are mentioned in those 10 risks, which we've covered quite a lot, but I thought I would take one perspective of them. So let's start with the line of the Levites. Who wants to tell me the waymarks for the line of the Levites? Where's Let's do it over here. So someone call out the waymarks for the Levites.
9/11.
9/11. Good. I'm going to put 2001 because we've got more than one date now for that waymark. We've got 11/9, for example. So we'll put 2001. Next one. Let's change that around.
2014.
Good. 2014.
2019.
Good.
2021.
Good. Nearly heard that.
Sunday.
Good. Okay. So I'm going to concentrate on this. No, I'm not going to concentrate on this here. So what's this waymark called? Going to have to be much faster because I've got a lot to get through. Increase of knowledge. What else is it called? It's got a few names.
Concord.
Concord, good. There is another name. So as soon as anyone knows the other name, just shout it out.
Death decree.
Death decree. Death decree in time. Yeah, good point. I didn't think of that one. That's the death decree, that minor waymark.
Yeah.
So in that case,
Panium.
So where's Panium? Someone said Panium. Does anyone else know where Panium is? Good. I heard someone whisper it, so I'll take it. Pentecost is Panium. There you go. There's a student of mine. Panium. I heard someone whisper 2021. So, and then somebody I think said loud cry. Where's loud cry? Anyone? It's not this one.
2018.
2018 was the loud cry. Very good. On the line of the priests. And actually, loud cry would be here. But when we do the repeating pattern, we would reapply the loud cry. I'm not actually sure how correct that would be to do that. Let's just skip that. Anyway, ordinarily, the loud cry is this minor waymark, formalization. Okay. In the line of Pyrrhus, what would this waymark be? This waymark that we're concentrating on today, we're going to try and put our 10 risks in the context of this waymark. What is it in the line of Pyrrhus?
Beneventum? Oh.
Say again?
Beneventum?
Beneventum. So which battle was Beneventum? Somebody else then? Where's Beneventum on this line?
2021.
Good. So that's there. So did Beneventum is Panium. And so does Pyrrhus win or lose Beneventum? Or does the King of the South win or lose Panium?
Pyrrhus loses.
Lose.
Loses. So what happens next? All his credibility's gone. And
Are you looking for 273 there?
well done. That's what I'm looking for. So 273 BC. Good. And what happens in 273 BC? The characteristics of that waymark. Anybody? Gloria, if you know. What actually happens in 273 BC?
I'm going
Like
to
the-
guess. Does Rome send ambassadors to Egypt?
Good. So Pyrrhus loses Beneventum, so he's lost all his credibility, and then Rome and Egypt form diplomatic relations. In other words, they come into concord. They're of one mind. They come into concord against Pyrrhus. So at this waymark, what will it look like today just from that alone? Because I don't know any more than you do, how it'll actually look on the day. But just from that alone, so who's Pyrrhus?
Russia?
Putin.
Good,
Putin.
good. So Putin's going to lose in Ukraine, and then basically the rest of the world who didn't side with Putin during the Ukrainian war, special military operation, they all come into concord against Russia and Russia's allies. And so therefore, I would assume everyone on Russia's side consolidates as well, and they have to sort of double down or suffer the consequences. Okay, so we've got Concord in 273 BC, the next waymark. So we would be here, I would think. I haven't heard anything different from anybody, but we're not at that waymark yet. Let me check my notes. So question, Panium or Beneventum, is it just an information war? Is it an information war, or is it the military, special military operation? Is it the Ukrainian war?
It's a proxy war.
It's the proxy war, so it's the Ukraine war. So I thought it was fought with elephants, though.
The elephants are information in our time.
Yeah, so the elephants are the information, so why are they throwing bombs at each other? How does it work?
Well, it's an information war between Russia and the United States, but it's the actual hot war as a proxy war.
Yeah, so it's both. You know me and my trick questions. I say, is it this one or this one? And the answer is usually both. So, or neither. So, in other words, the Ukraine war will be won, obviously using munitions and weapons and stuff. It is a hot war. It's a proxy war, but it will be won using information. So that's why I'm going to say we're not there yet. It's just my thought that hasn't been taught. But I think we're here because the Ukraine war isn't over. It hasn't been won yet by the West. So I don't think we're at this waymark yet. So some people in the past have thought things like when Roe v. Wade was overturned, oh, we must be at the increase of knowledge on the Sunday law. See, that would be an increase of knowledge on that waymark there, which kind of, sounded like it could be true, but I don't think so. I think you have to wait for the Ukraine war to be lost by Putin. Bearing in mind, I'll just say with the caveat that when God sees powers go down, it's not the same as when human beings see powers go down. For example, when did the Ottoman Empire end? Quick.
1840?
144,000.
August 11th,
Good.
1840.
And then if you put it into Wikipedia, when did the Ottoman Empire end? When do they tell you? When do human beings tell you it ended?
The 1920s?
I think, yeah,
1922?
1914 or something. Yeah, probably that. I don't really know. Much, much later, almost like 100 years later or something. Okay, so as far as my sort of best guess is that the way God sees powers going down is when they don't have any real power. They're just puppets. And they act. Do you remember the four? Turkey acquiesced its power to the four great powers of Europe. So God says, well, you're not a legitimate power anymore. Whereas human beings, Wikipedia seem to say it's as long as it physically lasts. So it doesn't exist anymore. So I'll just say that we're not at this way mark yet, just with that caveat, that maybe God has seen Putin lose already and I'm wrong. Okay. Any questions so far? So who would be on the side of Putin? Which countries would be on Putin's side? You've got Putin versus the West. Who should we put here?
China.
Let's put
Iran.
Russia, even though that's
China.
obvious. China, I'm going to do it in order of devotedness. Okay. Who would you say is more devoted to Putin, China or Iran?
China.
China. So
Iran.
China supply. I would say Iran. Why would you say that? I'll put Iran.
Because they're in, they have a lot of animosity with the West.
Iran is providing missiles.
You mean
Yes.
Russia provided missiles to, well, at one time Russia provided missiles to Iran. Now they're providing reciprocating.
Yes. So they've always been allies. And Iran has basically always been Russia's proxy, basically, without going too far back, 1979 and all of that. But Iran is actually supplying missiles, and they call them kamikaze drones, to Russia in the thousands. And so they're like providing military support to Russia. China's not doing that. So I don't think, I think
I thought I
would
read
put Iran.
today that they did, that they are starting to, China.
Yeah, it was just in the last couple of days that the CIA apparently have used Russian sources to claim that China is considering supplying military support to Russia. And so the warning, again, information war, they preempted it, they put it out there in the news, and they said, if you do that, you'll pay the penalty, harsh sanctions, you'll be excluded from the global economy, all of that. So they're using information again to win this Ukraine war. So I'm going to put China down here because they haven't. So in the recent UN, whatever it was, meeting, conference, assembly, I don't know. In the recent UN meeting, China was the only country not to condemn Russia. The only country in that meeting. I don't know how many countries were there, if it was all 200 and whatever. But they were the only country not to condemn Russia. So you can see, you can put them under Putin, but not as much as Iran. I think there's another country that's fully behind Putin. China could still maybe back out.
North
let's-
Korea.
In what way?
And
I was thinking India.
find weapons.
India. So in what way India?
North Korea has supplied Russia with weapons.
No, I mean, they could.
Oh, but they haven't done it yet.
I have heard that North Korea had supplied some weapons to Russia, but I don't know.
Really?
Maybe a small amount, but I've heard that they have supplied some. Some. I've heard it more than one occasion in the news.
Do you mean, so do you mean it's just a regular thing that they do and they're just still doing it? because Iran never supplied munitions to Russia before. They're only doing it because of Ukraine. Is that just something North Korea does? And has been doing
No,
it for
I
decades?
think this was because of the war. They had some weapons compatible with Russian equipment or something. When they, I've heard that a couple times, but I don't know the source.
Okay, I haven't heard it before, so I won't put it on the board if you're not sure of the source either, but we'll bear it in mind. Somebody said India. Why India? What's India and China both agreeing to do, even though it's not military?
I think it's
Not
about
just-
pipeline and oil. They want to buy oil, but they're talking about
That's right. So it's not just chariots and horsemen, it's also many ships. So it's military and economy. Okay. And that was Daniel 1140, which applies to 1989, but we reapply that to 2021. Okay, so don't make any mistake there. So China and India are still buying Russian energy, I think mainly oil, I don't know about gas. Whereas the rest of the world has sort of tried to turn their back on Russian energy imports. And Europe have capped the Russian oil price at something like $60, whereas today the global oil price is between $80 and $85. Whereas Brent crude is always a little bit more than West Texas, yeah. So Brent crude would be about $85 a barrel today. West Texas would be about 80. But they're
How
still
about
buying it.
Belarus? Belarus.
So that's what I was looking for. That's this gap here. So India's not really. Oh, something just interesting. India's kind of supporting Russia in that sense. They didn't agree with the sanctions on the oil. But yesterday, I think his name is Lavrov. Anyway, he went to India thinking that they were here, and they are. But he said that this war which Ukraine started, this war which Ukraine started, and the audience started laughing at him. And I think he's quite high up, Minister of Defense or something like that. So there's real cracks in the information war for Putin. Okay, Belarus. Why did you say that? I think that was Gloria.
Because Putin helped him to get reelected, Lukashenko.
And he's not supplied any weapons or anything like that, but he is fully behind Putin, unapologetically. It's just throwing his, and they do training in Belarus. I think there's been things like aircraft that are, I don't know the word, parked in Belarus.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a
Russian
staging
aircraft.
area.
Yeah, is that what it's called? Thank you. Okay, so he's fully behind the war effort, the Russian war effort. I just thought of another one. Who was I thinking of? Oh yeah, when you said Belarus, who else is in Europe that's sort of, I'm not sure. I think let's put this one a little bit more over to the middle, but kind of just causing a few headaches for NATO.
Turkey.
Yes, why Turkey?
They're blocking Sweden and that other country up there from getting in. Finland, yeah. They're blocking them from getting into NATO.
Good. Okay, so that's looking like what Concord might. Not sure about India, China, where they're going to end up when we actually get to 273 BC.
Also, Troy wrote in the chat the article. He put the article on there about North Korea secretly supplying weapons to Russia.
Oh, interesting. NBC News. Okay.
NBC News.
Put North. I better not put it on the board if I haven't even read it, but I acknowledged. So, quick quote. This is from this is from the 10 Risks from the Media Broadcast. It says, we remain in the depths of a geopolitical recession, with the risks this year the most dangerous we've encountered in the 25 years since we started Eurasia Group. So you can see external sources are recognizing the seriousness of this. We know because we do lines and waymarks and so forth. We know Daniel 12:1. It's not that far off anymore. Mark of the beast, etc. We know that prophetically, but they can just do it analytically. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. So these are scientists. They're not just some quirky media group or something. They're actually scientists. And they do the doomsday clock thing. I think a couple of months ago, they said the doomsday clock was set at 90 seconds until midnight. The closest to the hour it has ever been, and that's in 76 years that they've been doing this. Midnight represents the moment at which we will have made Earth uninhabitable for humanity. We're living in a time of unprecedented danger, and the doomsday clock time reflects that reality. So in 76 years, when you think of, I don't know, World War I, World War II, they're saying this is actually unprecedented danger. Worst ever. Okay, I wanted to add in Nouriel Roubini. Anyone remember his nickname? Nouriel Roubini, because before Parminder sent out those 10 documents,
Wasn't he the UN High Commissioner of Human Rights? Oh, no. Sorry, somebody else.
No, not that person. Sorry, again, before Elder Parminder sent out those 10 documents, he posted a video of an interview. I think it was Channel 4 in England, I can't remember. And he was interviewing an economist called Nouriel Roubini.
Mm-hmm.
What was his nickname? Do you remember?
Dr. Doom or something like that?
That's it. Yeah. Nouriel Roubini. Dr. Doom. So why was he nicknamed Dr. Doom? Is it because he's such a pessimist? Like we are, end of the world. Why was he called Dr. Doom? You want to remember?
He was just a realist. He was just giving the truth. It wasn't pleasant, so they called him Dr. Doom.
And how did he get his fame, his notoriety? What did he do that almost no one else did? Meredith Whitney. But anyway, there was someone that predicted it. He was a trader and he predicted that the subprime market would collapse with awful consequences. So Meredith Whitney, I don't know the name of that trader, and Nouriel Roubini, they all predicted the 2008 crash.
Michael Burry was the one who predicted one of them.
Was it? Okay, thanks. The 2008 crash, is that on our line? Is that the way, Mark? So the 2008 crash started in September and it bottomed out in, I think, March of 2009. Is 2009 away, Mark?
Something about the 2520.
Good. So that would be this one here. That would be this increase of knowledge, 2009. Internally, it was like a 25-hour video series by Elder Parminder on 2520. And externally, it was the crash because it bottomed out in 2009. That was the bottom. So you already do have this person kind of loosely connected to this increase of knowledge here. And we're looking at this increase of knowledge here. And he is saying that stagnant economic growth, debt, and inflation will lead to a global crash. So I'm going to take his word for it. So I think we can see the global economy, he's saying global crash. You know, it was here, like a taster or whatever we say, but it'll happen again at some point. I don't know when, could be anywhere. I'm going to say something. Any thoughts while I'm thinking? Oh no, I was going to ask you all a question, but I already gave you the answer. Okay. Oh yeah, that was it. This was all to do with debt. And then what they did was quantitative easing. So the government said, we're all in a bunch of debt, so let's just print a whole bunch of money. I think it was literally trillions of dollars. And they just let that money into the system, and they can control the amounts that they let in and withdraw and stuff like that. I don't understand it. But they just printed a load of money, which is called quantitative easing. And everybody said, all you're doing is kicking the can down the road. And it seems like that's what's happened, because Nouri el-Roubini is now saying it's debt. And of course, when you print money, it causes inflation, and he's saying debt plus inflation, as well as stagnant economic growth, which was other things. Okay. How time do I have? Okay. He said that private and public sector debt is the problem. That's basically all debt, private and public sector. And the US share of GDP, the debt is, the US share of GDP is over 700%. So the gross domestic product, that everything that America produces, the debt in the public and private sector is 700% of that. So you can see it's insolvent. That's never going to be paid. He said some entire sectors are insolvent: housing, business, some financial institutions, and even some governments. And he said that some entire countries will never pay back their debts. So I really do think, you know, the way that is the can kicked down the road. On the economy, if you go through those 10 documents that Elder Parminder sent out, a lot of them, they'll just say things like Russia or China, but like 90% of them, say 9 out of 10, they all affect the economy as well. If it's water or energy scarcity or inflation, all of these things affect, they hit you in the pocket. They all, you know, Ukraine, it's affected the economy. It's not just a war. Iran, they said they would expect some military confrontation this year, and that will affect oil prices. And just look around, everything you see got there using oil, because it had to be driven to your house, wherever you are, using gas. So it really seems like economically the world's in for a major crash, just like Dr. Doom said. He said he wasn't a pessimist, by the way. During the 80s and the 90s, he was very optimistic. That was a time of unprecedented global growth, actually. Okay. And one thing I want you to be aware of is all of this economic, like food scarcity and things like that, it all leads to civil unrest. The Arab Spring, 2011, it was a knock-on effect from this crash. There's one school of thought in economics where they say that instead of America and the West, or particularly America, experiencing hyperinflation because of all that quantitative easing, they just exported that inflation to the developing countries, and that's why it hit the Middle East so badly. There was even a bread shortage, and they started the Arab Spring, all of those riots and stuff. So if I would have thought the situation we're in will lead to civil unrest, especially in developing countries. Any thoughts? Been doing a lot of talking. Let's see where I am. Okay, one thing I wanted to clear up, I think it was about 5 weeks ago when I think it was Lana that was speaking on Sabbath, and she was going through one of those documents. And she read this: a small group of individuals has amassed an extraordinary amount of power. And she asked, who is that group? Does anyone remember who we identified as that group 5 weeks ago? I'll carry on reading. What do you think? A small group of individuals has amassed an extraordinary amount of power, making decisions of profound geopolitical consequence with limited information in opaque environments. On a spectrum of geopolitics, with integrated globalization at one extreme, these developments are at the other extreme, and they're driving a disproportionate amount of the uncertainty in the world today. So who did we say that small group of individuals that has amassed an extraordinary amount of power is?
Is it the billionaires?
That's what we said. I think it was 5 weeks ago. I looked on the schedule. That's what we said. I don't think it is though, because if you read sort of the next sentence or one or two sentences on, it tells, within that paragraph, it says, on the spectrum of geopolitics with integrated globalization, because they're coming into concord at one extreme, then I'm going to do this. These developments are at the other extreme, and they're driving a disproportionate amount of the uncertainty in the world today. Putin's doing that. North Korea is doing that, if we had that on the list. And if you read a few sentences down, or the next sentence, I can't remember, it says, our top risks this year are skewed towards these actors and their impact. Rogue Russia, Maximum Z, weapons of mass destruction, I guess that's at least those top. Yeah, Russia, Iran, China. India has nuclear weapons. And Iran. So it's not actually just those awful, terrible rich people. It's staying within the context of this study. So I said there was cracks, pretty major cracks in Putin's information war. He's really not winning it. I mentioned Lavrov in India yesterday, and also yesterday, do you remember Oleg Deripaska, one of the oligarchs, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but one of the richest people in Russia, if not the richest person in Russia. He said yesterday that Russia will run out of money as soon as next year.
Mm-hmm.
And Medvedev, the former prime minister of Russia, he said a day or two ago that if Putin loses the war, it will destroy Russia. So it's all fitting into our deadly wound death of the King of the South. Did someone want to say something? Okay, another quote from the doctor. Oh,
real quick.
Go ahead, please.
I don't know if anybody saw that Lavrov got laughed at in Delhi. I can't
Yes,
remember what he said, but I just remember
that's right. He said that Ukraine started this war of aggression against Russia. And everybody just started laughing. So you can see Russia, even when they visit, well, we put India nearly at the bottom of the list, but even, you know, he went there because he thought they were friends, and even there, they're just disrespecting him and laughing at his information. He's losing this information. Okay, another quote from the documents. Before Russia's fall from grace, Iran had been the world's most powerful rogue state. Tehran has used espionage, drone and missile strikes, support for terrorism, proxy wars. Russia will likely intensify its efforts to destabilize the United States and Europe, but with greater asymmetric security capabilities than Iran, with the world's biggest nuclear arsenal as the ultimate cover to deter Western retaliation. And then this next paragraph is about 273 BC, in my opinion. There is a silver lining. Just like Iran's rogue behavior has created a new alignment among Gulf nations, what's the author talking about? What's the new alignment among Gulf nations, which is anti-Iran, to counter Iranian influence? 2020, the Gulf nations, so the Arab nations, United Arab Emirates. Okay, it tells you, let me start again. There is a silver lining. Just like Iran's rogue behavior has created a new alignment among Gulf nations, the United States and Israel, most dramatically, but not limited to, the Abraham Accords. So they were signed in 2020. I'll go into that a sec. I'll just finish this. So the Arab states, America and Israel, doesn't mention Europe, but that's what it is. They're all coming into unity. Russia's rogue behavior will create ongoing opportunities for the G7 to strengthen cooperation among advanced industrial democracies and rebuild institutions for a stronger global security order. So they're saying that, I'm not going to say New World Order, but there'll be a stronger global order as far as security is concerned. So they're in concord against these countries.
Aaron,
That's, yes.
I think the Abraham Accord was with Jared Kushner.
Thank you. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That said, a rogue Russia represents a geopolitical crisis of the highest order. It's a threat to global security, Western political systems, the cybersphere, space, and food security. Again, food security, I think, leads to civil unrest. Okay. Let's leave the Abraham Accords. Hopefully we'll have time to finish, and I'll go to it, because it's more to do with Iran, which we'll finish with. So I noticed only 2 small points about the document on China. It's the second largest economy in a fragile global economy. They're having trouble in their real estate sector, like everyone else in the world, with their debt. So when this crash, assuming it does happen, when it starts cascading, China's going to be an enormous thing which escalates it. And of course, China's affinity to Russia, which we've already mentioned, joining Putin in Russia's isolation from the global economy. If they stay on that side, then they'll also be isolated from the global economy. What will that do to the economy? So even though we're all in concord here and we've won, it's not all good news. It's basically America is kind of ruling over the seventh head, but it is the end of the world. The world is collapsing. So it's not all fun, in other words, and prosperity is the word I'm looking for.
So, Aaron, they were saying that Biden was really the driving force with uniting NATO when the Ukraine war. Does that figure in as a foretaste of America?
Oh, that's a good point. So when we finally get to the seventh head after Sunday Law, we're starting to see already what it's looking like, how it looks, with when Russia's going here, but Russia's gone here, and America leads over NATO. I think that's a good point. Haven't thought about it before. Sounds right. Basically, this increase of knowledge, this line, it carries on all the way to Sunday Law, and we start to know what things look like from Panion onwards. So sounds right to me. Yeah, definitely sounds right to me.
He's been getting like great accolades for his strength for an 80-year-old man. You know what I mean? As far as political strength, I mean, they criticize him for other things, but the work that he did with NATO and preparing for, garnering up that unity, he was successful.
I think he was. I think he did a really good job. And the billions or maybe trillions that they've sent in military hardware and so forth and aid, that was an amazing response. So that's true. One thought though, am I right in saying it won't be a Democrat in the White House after? So that makes me, if you compare and contrast, maybe it will look a bit different.
Yeah, I think I just see it kind of like a foretaste, regardless of who the leadership is at the time, that this is where we're headed.
I can see that, because if you don't look at the individual, at the moment there's still uncertainty and Russia's still doing a pretty awful job. But when it's all done and dusted and everyone's rejoicing and Ukraine has won, then whoever's in the White House, which we know happens by here. So yeah, okay, that does make sense. Was someone else going to say something? Okay, so on that note, the document on America. 1 year into Russia's failed war, the United States has only gained as the world's sole global military leader. So that ties in nicely to what we were saying about America presiding over the seventh head of the United Nations. The United States has only gained as the world's sole global military leader. Core allies clearly recognize their reliance on the United States for national security, broadly defined. America's comparative economic power is stronger coming out of the pandemic and through the Russia war. Oh, let me start again. I said it wrong. America's comparative economic power is stronger coming out of the pandemic and through the Russia war than after the global financial crisis in 2008. So America came out quite unscathed by this crash. It just exported all the problems, as I said. And here they're saying that they're coming out even stronger than that now after COVID and the war in Ukraine. So again, presiding over the UN, strongest power, and notice they say militarily and economically. Again, chariots and horsemen and many ships. Also, any revenue, not only from energy, any revenue that Putin gets from oil and gas, he also relies on exporting military hardware. And who's going to want to buy Russia's weapon systems now? When we've seen how they actually perform in a real life battle. Okay, on America, it does say US politics doesn't appear higher on this year's list of top risks. So this isn't an immediate threat to them, but there is also the continuing risk of political violence in the United States. The polarization that drives public anger has become a structural feature of American life, fueled in part by social media information. Of course, red-blue animosity has been trending higher for decades, but today roughly 2/3 of Americans view members of the opposing party not just as wrong, but as dishonest, immoral, and a threat to the country itself. And the belief that threats and violence are politically justified has risen among members of both parties. So again, and the belief that threats and violence are politically justified has risen among members of both parties. Though the increase has been sharper among Republicans, Americans' growing propensity towards settling political debates through non-democratic means will increase the risk of large-scale protests and one-off acts of political violence. So again, I'm kind of shining a light on civil unrest, not just through economics, but also through politics in this country at least, of course in others as well. Okay, doing good for time. So I'm going to finish on Iran. So there's been some kind of worrying developments with Iran. So Iran is an ongoing story. We can trace it back to 1979, the Iranian Revolution. And that's when so basically, I think it was the Shah of Iran, who was an American puppet in Iran. And he brought all these Western values to Iran, and he was a brutal dictator. He got cancer, went to America to be treated in an American hospital, and the people hated him so much they saw it as, I can't remember what it's called, anyway, absent from the country. So that's when Ayatollah Khomeini flew. He was in, what do you call it, hiding? Anyway, he was in Paris, on the outskirts of Paris, and he flew back to Iran to the most amazing scenes of happiness you've ever seen, and he just, it was a coup, a bloodless coup. He took control, and that was the Iranian Revolution in a nutshell. That was 1979, and he died, Ayatollah Khomeini died in 1989, and that's when Ayatollah Khamenei, which is the present Ayatollah, supreme leader, took over, took control. And I think everybody probably knows how unpopular he is in Iran right now with all these unprecedented protests. But you can put Iran on the prophetic message. So this is what Elder Tess has done. This isn't me. And she said if it's in 1979 and 1989 with those two leaders, then you know it's a prophetic act. So you had the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which is basically just a nuclear deal, which the Obama administration, they came up with a nuclear deal with Iran that they would stop enriching uranium or stop enriching above 3% or something, but they could continue developing their missile systems. So they do have quite advanced missile capabilities, Iran. And then in 2018, Trump gets into power because he doesn't like Obama. He just scrapped a lot of things which Obama did, just scrapped them. And that was one of them. He just pulled out of the nuclear deal. And by 2019, Iran are enriching uranium again. Give you one guess what date it was in 2019. What date did Iran start enriching uranium in 2019?
November 9th.
Good. How did you know? So on 11/9/2019, they began enriching uranium because they pulled out of the nuclear agreement after Trump did anyway, in Fordo. That's one of their enrichment facilities. I want to make a note of something. When you read about Iran today, you're going to hear people, is it Antony Blinken? Anyway, you're going to hear politicians saying they're still, with the enrichment, they're 12 days, literally 12 days away from enriching uranium to weapons grade. They're only, so they're 12 days away is what's the most recent thing. A couple of days ago, he said that, if it was him. But they say, don't worry, they're still like 2 months or 6 months away from actually making a bomb. And one of the reasons they say is because they don't have a uranium core. So it's just a sphere made of uranium metal. And everything goes on inside this, like the explosion, the fission or fusion or whatever it is. Okay. I don't know why, because obviously they know what they're talking about. But it was January 13th, 2021 that Iran started working on uranium metal, which is used for the core of the nuclear weapon. 2021, 22, that's 2 years ago they started working on this. So I can source it and everything. But I'm not sure if I was Netanyahu, I would have so much confidence in saying, don't worry, still 6 months isn't even that long. 6 months away from actually making a nuclear bomb because they don't have this uranium core yet. I think they may well be well on their way. But Iran also, when they pulled out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, they also turned off the IAEA surveillance cameras within the enrichment facilities. So basically the IAEA is the International Atomic Energy Agency. There's nuclear people which check up on Iran and what they're up to. But Iran switched their cameras off. So I think they still allow some inspections, but the outside world doesn't really know what's going on inside. Well, so the development this week, probably about a week ago, is that those inspectors in Fordo, in the same place which started enriching on November 9th, because they have 2 enrichment facilities, they actually discovered particles of 84% enrichment. So, does anyone want to say anything? When I talk for too long, I get a bit wondering if someone's thinking something. Okay, so what's this date here?
2012 time setting. Good.
2012 time setting. Elder Parminder's prediction. That would be the internal. I don't have room. So I'm not saying that this is this has never been taught as the external. I'm just saying that it just so happens that in 2012, Netanyahu was still the Prime Minister of Israel. He's been in and out a few times. And he went to the United Nations, and you might remember this if I draw this. Something like that. And this was 90%. So it was a little bomb. And he said 90% enrichment of uranium. And he said this was their red line. That's when they'll take out their facilities with a military strike. So they've been allowed to enrich up to 3%, then 6%, then 20%, and probably about a year or two ago, they got to 60%. They were all very proud of it and telling everyone. This was after they pulled out of the nuclear agreement. And in the last few days, these inspectors have discovered particles of 84%. Okay, now you still can make a nuclear weapon with 84% enrichment. What was it called? Fat Boy, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. I think those bombs had less than 90% enrichment in them. Okay, and of course, so that's why they said whoever it was in America, whether it was Antony Blinken or whoever, said that they're 12 days away from weapons grade uranium now. We won't really know the full, because obviously Iran's denying it. They're just saying it was an accident, as if they could do something this sophisticated and difficult to attain by accident. That would make me believe in Allah. But anyway, they're discussing it tomorrow in Vienna, so we might find out more. But if they are actually trying, they have reached 84%. I can't imagine Netanyahu allowing that to go on much more than, I don't want to say, but not very long at all. Any thoughts?
So my roommate is a Muslim, and the stories that she tells, especially of the history of April 1st, April Fools, is catalog of horrific acts of violence and devastation, Jews versus Muslims. And I can't help but think that Israel is projecting a little bit, saying that and yet they're the ones, a lot of raids at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, among other things. But
We missed the last part of what you said, Alyssa.
that Israel's perpetrating at least the bulk of the news reports that I hear of the violence against nations. The Muslims are seeming like the victim, well, not seeming like they are and have been the victims of horrific violence. And I can't help but think that Israel is projecting, saying that Iran will bomb, because this is the big thing that Iran has been, or that Israel has been saying Iran is going to do, is bomb Israel off the face of the earth. That's why Israel is wanting to wipe out Iran. It just seems like there's a little projection going on.
So yeah, this isn't the whole story. Israel certainly does not have clean hands at all. They're guilty of many things. But it is actually Iran that has said, we'll wipe Israel off the face of the earth, we'll wipe them off the map. They've said it for decades. Either way, they're an okay. Anyways, it would be a threat to Israel's existence, I think. There would be different opinions on that, I guess. Bearing in mind, Israel has 200 or 300 nuclear weapons undeclared. They haven't even signed up to the non-proliferation treaty. The only thing is, I don't think it's a credible threat, preemptive threat to anybody, their nuclear weapons. Anyway, we could get into all the politics of that, but that's the situation.
Aaron, I have a question. So those Muslims around the Palestine and the Israel there, are they Sunni or Shia? Are they the radical or?
So they're Shia. So in Palestine, they're Shia, so they're under Iran. I don't want to put it there because it's not the right
So
thing.
the Iran Revolution, the Arab Spring, those are revolution going from Sunni to Shia, right? They're radicalizing the area from pro-West to anti-West. Was Khomeini pro-West? Was he getting along with the U.S.?
No. So there was a democratically elected president of Iran, Mossadegh. You need to check this. This is all off the top of my head, and this is going way back. And basically, the CIA just took him down because he privatized the Iranian oil industry, which would make it harder for America to just get that cheap oil. So America just took Mossadegh down and installed the Shah of Iran, this pro-Western puppet. He was a brutal dictator and pro-Western. So all these immodest attire and media, movies and stuff started to come into Iran, and at that time that was very shocking. So then when he went to hospital in America, Shah of Iran, that's when Khomeini flew back and took over the government. So Khomeini's never been a Western sympathizer. And so he did spread Shiite Islam around Iran, and then exported it to other parts of the Middle East. And that was a big threat to Saudi at the time, 1979. And there was other things going on in 1979.
So that tenure between 1979 to 1989 was the spreading of the Shiite religion. And why was he killed? Who killed him?
I don't think he was killed. I think he just died, as far as I know.
Okay, thank you.
Quickly Google that. Ayatollah Khomeini. How did he die? 1989. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I don't think he was killed. So they call it the Shia Crescent because if you look on a map, can't remember the countries: Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, and Palestine. I think it creates a sort of a crescent. There might be some other countries I can't remember. Yeah, so the Palestinians are under Iran. Okay, where did I get to? What time is it? Okay, still got a bit of time. So we're in a pretty desperate situation. War with Iran they've been doing this for decades, and it's been like an absolute anathema to the West to go to war with Iran. It would be, I think, much worse than Iraq or Afghanistan or anything like that. So you've got Russia, and Iran is under them as their proxy. But Iran is the global superpower. So it's the superpower in the Middle East, rivaled by Saudi Arabia. So they have proxies underneath them. And so if you go to war with Iran, you're also going to war with all those Palestinian factions that would start to fight for the cause. Islamic Jihad, Al-Aqsa Martyrs, Hamas, they would all do whatever they're going to do. And then you've got all those elements in Syria, was the other country in that Shia Crescent. You've got all those pro-Iranian elements in Syria, Iraq, and I hope not in the West. I hope they aren't sleeper cells here and in the West. So it'd be a pretty major war, and a fifth of the world's oil goes through it's not just the Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz. It's a little choke point. So of course, well, if you go to war with Iran, of course, the price of oil is going to go up, exacerbating the inflation problem and the energy crisis, which we already have with Russia. I can't imagine what it would look like. I say they've been considering military strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities for a long time. And back here again in 2012, it's known now that Netanyahu's, I guess, security cabinet or whoever gets to vote on that military action, it was 5 people. And Netanyahu wanted to go and bomb Iranian nuclear facilities in 2012. So he took a vote, and it was 3-2 against. So he lost by 1 vote. Otherwise, you would have already taken out those nuclear installations. There would have been this war.
So this is a holy war, right, between the Palestinian and the Israel, the Jews there, because they want to take over all that Israel back, the Jews, because it's part of their end time events, right? The Protestants too, that Christ is going to come back to Jerusalem, or
Don't know about that apostate Protestant prophecy very much at all. There's something about the 12th Imam, which is a Muslim prophecy. I can't remember. When you said they want to take something back, what was your question? Who's they, and what do they want to take back?
So the Jews want to take the whole Israel back, get rid of all the Palestinians in the area, right? That's what they're constantly fighting right now.
Basically, I don't know about the whole of that country, but the settlements. So they are in. I'm not an expert on this. I might be using all the wrong words and have a bit of the wrong perspective. But basically, what's happening is that there are Israeli elements, including Netanyahu, that want to increase the Jewish occupation of the land. And so they build Jewish homes called settlements. And I'll just say on Palestinian land. I don't know if that's technically correct or not. But they have just kicked out Palestinians from their houses, just taken them over in the recent past. So it's a big problem. So that's the Palestinian struggle, occupation.
And I would add to Aaron and to what Gloria said is Israel is very strongly connected to conservative religious right politicians and Protestants. In fact, Secretary of State Pompeo under Trump, made things about prophecy and comments that Israel is integral. I can't think of the word. Anyway, they're important. And so America's foreign policy is affected by that end time belief by Protestant Christians who are in the government.
Yes. Yeah, as far as I know. I think that's why Trump, one of the first things he did when he got in was move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Because Tel Aviv is the capital, but those Protestants, they want Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel. And there's various political problems with that, but they see it as all prophetic. Can't remember any more than that. I think you know more than I do. Can't remember that whole thing. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Just one more thought. So because of the Ukraine war, can we see that maybe Biden will be reelected once more because of the Ukraine war? Because you have the conservative right wing against supporting Ukraine, with all the military and money. So yeah, for this end time events to totally be fulfilled and Russia going into a death. Can we see Biden being reelected just once more in 2024? This is just a sign.
So just my personal thoughts on that, just putting a few bits and pieces together from memory. So you're talking about the paleo-conservatives' policy of isolationism, and that's Trumpism. So that's what we're seeing today in some of the Republican elements. So what you're saying, I think, if I kind of repeat your thought back, is we know, I think Elder Parminder and Elder Tessa both said that at the Sunday law, you have to have a Republican president in the White House. So the next election is next year. So if Biden wins it, you're putting off the Sunday Law for another 4 years, which is fine. But the other thing you get at Sunday Law is the death of the King of the South. So then what you're thinking is, Russia looks like they're going to win the war past this way mark, or not lose the war past this way. Russia's going to survive more than another year and a half or whatever it is. And I'm not sure that's a given. Did all that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah. So in other words, you're saying you think we need Biden in the White House in the next election because Russia won't lose by then. I'm not too sure that's true. I think Russia could quite easily lose the war in the next year and a half. What does anyone else think?
Especially with Oleg Deripaska saying the money, Russia's money is going to run out. I'd see that as kind of a significant warning and giving a time frame for the next events.
And
didn't Alder Perminder basically make a comment that the King of the South had basically already lost after the last thing he posted, or one of the things he posted?
So about 2 posts ago, roughly 2 or 3 maybe, he did say that, and it was linked to a video which he sent, which you have to watch. It's really good. It was a German media, DW. I'll let you watch it rather than repeat it all here. But I don't, because then the logic, I think, would be that the Sunday Law would have to be, say, 6 years away, which means Russia survives another 6 years. Yeah, I'm not sure. So, one thing about Israel is that at the moment, they're having their own internal problems as well. Just like Iran has, I think, unprecedented protests, even though protests is really a part of Iran's history. I think they're actually unprecedented. And that's, so the Iranian protests have been going on, I don't know how long. And the IRGC are just killing people. They're arresting them and giving them the death sentence, maybe half a dozen people. And it's all over a headscarf. Okay. Like when we're all in heaven, hopefully, and looking back, we're going to think, all those people died over a headscarf. Are you kidding? Anyway, it's the hijab, and it's a union of church and state enforcing the persecution of women and making them dress modestly in the Islamic view and wear a hijab. And they've got the moral police out there beating people, say kidnapping or arresting them and imprisoning them and giving them the death sentence. So you've got that going on in Iran, but in Israel, I think also it's fair to say, you can check, but I think there's unprecedented protests there, and they've been going on weeks. And that's since the latest Israeli election, where they now have the most far-right government ever. And so it's very much church and state, or synagogue and state to them as well. And they have very ultra-Orthodox elements in their government now. And it's something, what the protests are specifically over is that if the justices and their Supreme Court rule one way, then it goes to Parliament and it takes a majority of 1 vote to overturn Israeli law. And now, because that Parliament, that government is ultra-Orthodox, they think they're just going to sweep through all this anti-gender legislation now, especially anti-LGBT and that kind of thing. So it's very funny how these 2 powers are just paralleling themselves, failing this mark of the beast issue right now. So that's the backdrop to that. But having said that, the most far-right government in Israel ever are going to be straining at the leash to put an end to the Iranian nuclear program. So I just think they've got a green light. Oh, also on that, it's not just Israel's decision, it's America's decision. Even though in 2012 they would have done it without America. How much time have we got? Not much. I have a class in 20 minutes, so I can't go over. But they also really should have American consent, before they bomb Iran. Okay, so back in 2012, they would have trouble. The distance between Israel and Iran is so great, especially if you can't fly over the Arab airspace, Saudi, etc. Got to go all the way around, and to get back, they would need to bomb with precision and finish the nuclear program, avoiding all the air defenses and surface-to-air defenses that Iran has, and then get back safely to Israel. And they would need to refuel to do that. But what the big change is that in July of last year, Israel and America held the biggest military drills ever, and they repeated them again in October, and it was all designed at Israel bombing Iranian nuclear facilities, and they tested it, and now Iran can refuel themselves. They don't need America. But anyway, those drills were to make sure that they were coordinated, communications and all sorts, to be able to do that together. So America's much more on board bombing Iran than they were ever before. And the other thing is, we'll go back to those Abraham Accords. So in 2020, there was actually a prophetic waymark in 2020 involving Islam. Does anyone remember what it was? Prophetic waymark.
Is it the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan?
I think that was September 2021. That was formalization on the fractal level. So not that one. I wonder if it corresponds with two minor waymarks a day.
Death of a leader there in the Muslim world.
Thinking death decree? No, it wasn't. I don't think it was that. Okay, so I'm thinking of, I think it was Martinique, around about May 2019, Elder Parminder. I don't want to get too much into that, I have too much time, but basically, does this ring a bell if I just do it this way? You've got 1798 and 1801.
Oh yeah, in your war.
And then what was this now? Wasn't it 1839? That wouldn't be 10 years though. 1839 and 1841. 1841. We had 2 and 2. It's obviously not 10 years. So he said, this is another way of applying 2001. 1989. No.
So these are the Syrian war, right? Is that the Syrian wars?
Anyway, it was something like that. I won't leave it on the board because, but it was that the Syrian civil wars were fought in two, he called them tranches. And so he said, Syrian civil war will be fought in 2 tranches as well. That's obviously not there. And this would be 1840, August 11th, 1840, Islam restrained. And so this was going to be 2020, Syrian civil war, 2011, this is it here, to 2013, 2, and 2019 to 2021. Elder Tess had already predicted in September 2018 in her Midnight Cry at FFA that the Syrian civil war would end in 2021. So I'd have forgotten that, but that's quite profound. She made a bunch of predictions there. And so Parminder gave a second witness that it would end in 2021, and that therefore 2020 lines up with 1840. So 2020 was a restraint of Islam, as well as Concord and George Floyd and all of that. So anyway, it's just interesting that the Abraham Accords was also 2020. And as we read in the documents Elder Parminder sent out, it was the Abraham Accords were an anti-Iranian move sort of a diplomatic move to, I'll say, restrain Iran.
Is that withdrawal of Trump withdrew troops from Syria in 2019? Is that connected to that?
That's right.
Rafia?
No, that was 2018, wasn't it? Heraclea. He withdrew troops from Syria and he upset the Kurds. I think that was December 20. I can't remember.
I think you're right. I think it's December something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also remember. Anyway, can't remember. So I'll just move on. Abraham Accords. So basically, obviously, the Arab states and Israel are historic enemies, but there's a lot of time that's gone by, and they have a mutual enemy in Iran. So by the time you get to 2020, you've got Jared Kushner going to the Arab states and saying, hey, everyone, let's be friends with Israel. So they created diplomatic ties, economic ties, and obviously, if you're friends, if Israel wants to fly over your airspace to bomb Iran, then you'll say, yes, sure, because they're our mutual enemy anyway. So not only can Israel refuel their own jets, but they can also request flying over Saudi airspace, just going as the crow flies instead of all the way around. So Saudi Arabia is not a member of the Abraham Accords yet, but they're sympathetic to them, and the thought is that very soon, one day maybe, that they will actually officially sign up. What country is it? Bahrain. I think Bahrain already has Israeli air defenses stationed in their country now. So like I say, once you're friends, you can start buying military equipment, stuff like that. So Iran's really cornered right now. Terrible domestic unrest. Arab states and Israel joined together, and Israel and America and the West joined together, not only in these military deals. One was in July, when diplomacy was still on the table, and then when that joint comprehensive plan of action completely collapsed and couldn't be revived, in October, America and Israel staged new military drills aimed at Iran without, and they just said there's no diplomacy anymore, basically. So Iran's really cornered right now, and if they're going to go and produce 84% uranium, I just see it as all going wrong. I don't know, maybe sometime this year onwards. I don't know if I covered everything.
Are you seeing something happening at our closer probation with Iran?
Our closer probation. Oh, Daniel 12:1.
Yeah, of 144,000.
Thank you for that. I was about to close, but that's very important. That is something I wanted to say. So if you remember, I'll do it dotted because it's not part of the line of the Levites. So it's not on this line. But here you have Daniel 12:1. Okay. And in a previous, I think it was a Sabbath meeting, probably must be, that I took, we talked about Islam. Sorry, my alarm's going on. Islam first hurts the army of Rome, America, and then kills the army of Rome, America. So here Islam kills America. And we were talking about, is it really going to happen? Is it just a parable? Is it? So since then, I was talking to Parminder anyway. So I said, oh, hey, this came up. And he said, no, he thinks it is, it's a military attack. It's not we're not spiritualizing it away. It's literal. That's what I'm looking for. Whether it's terrorist or what. Just a thought that this was terrorist. So maybe this is terrorist, if that was a harbinger of that. But it is a literal attack on America. So
there will be actual bombings in America. Is that what you're saying? Just like 9/11?
Yes. And you're saying, so then is it Iran? I guess your logic is Iran is the rogue Islamic actor right now. So is it all leading up? Is it showing us that it's Iran here? I don't know, and I don't know that you could say that definitively, because as you already mentioned, September 2021, Afghanistan gets put back on the prophetic line. And now that it's gone back to the Taliban, that allows those Sunni terroristic elements to start retraining, refinancing, regrouping. Al-Qaeda, or I don't know about ISIS where they are. I think they're more in the Levant. So I don't know if it's going to be sleeper cells from the IRGC, the Iranian, state terrorism, or will it just be Al-Qaeda again because that was Al-Qaeda? I don't know. But yeah, that was important. Thank you for that, because I did want to correct myself and say, yeah, that's literal.
Thank you. That's it was a good review. Just like Panium is happening. Yeah, we believe all these lines will come true, and the waymarks. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any last thoughts?
Yes, Aaron. When you were showing the unrest and protests in Iran and Israel, and then connected the headscarf, so that it's against women, and then the anti-LGBT. There was a recent article, I think a few days ago, and that women who get abortions in South Carolina could face the death penalty. Yes, that's working its way around. And then there was another article that the U.S. abortion bans violate international law, and that 200 human rights groups say in a letter they are urging the United Nations to intervene.
Yes. Yeah.
In the United States. I mean, that's a first, that we're now the country that's going to be intervened by the United Nations because of our unequal rights and violence against certain groups.
Kathy, I thought they allowed abortion in South Carolina last year by the justices or something. They had a majority.
I think the midterm elections changed that. But there's a new bill going through now. It was on MSN.com. But just Google South Carolina death penalty abortions. It hasn't passed, but it's making its way through them.
Thank you.
Okay. Any last thoughts? Will have to just be a few minutes.
It's amazing how all this radicalization, the patriarchy, sexism, misogyny is worldwide. You see it from Italy, South Korea. I know it's a conservative president. He was just reelected. So this patriarchy is a culture. Like Elder Tess, I think one of the last media broadcast articles she put out was about in Africa, the vast patriarchy, the religious patriarchy that's happening there. Yeah.
Okay. Shall we close in prayer? Almighty God in heaven, we thank you for the signs of the times which you've shown us how to put line upon line. We just pray that you'll give us wisdom, that we may be among the wise prophetically, that you'll help us to navigate these end times, both personally and as a group. We pray these things in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you so much,
Thank
Aaron.
you.
Amen. Thank you, Aaron.
God bless.
Sabbath.
Happy
Happy
Sabbath,
Sabbath,
you.
everyone.
God bless.
Happy Sabbath. Thank you, Aaron.
Sabbath.
Too much
Happy
time for-
Sabbath.